Welcome to everybody at home or watching on live stream, and Rogers as well. Before we get started, today we acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. We are thankful to share in the special spirit of this place, rich in the energy of Mother Earth, our ancestors, and the love of all creation. The adoption of the agenda. The content of the Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee for October 7th, 2019 be adopted as presented. Moved by Mayor Saunderson, seconded by Councillor Berman. All those in favor? Excellent. Business arising from the previous minute. Oh, there is an addendum on there, addition of the BIA minutes from the August 26, 2019 for anybody who is in the audience as well. Any business arising from the previous meeting? Seeing none. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. If you do find yourself at any point in the meeting that you come across one, just please let us know then. Any deputations? Excellent. Speeding along. Reports of minutes of other committees and boards. That the Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following minutes, including the recommendations contained therein, to the next regular meeting of Council. 6.1, Collingwood Downtown BIA Board of Management minutes, September 12th and August 26th, 2019. And committee recommendation of the Collingwood Downtown BIA Board of Management request that there be free parking in downtown Collingwood from December 1st to January 2nd, 2020. Committee recommendations that Collingwood Downtown BIA Board of Management recommends that council that Susan Holder be appointed as a member of the BI Board of Management. Keep going. It's been a while, thanks. 6.2, Museum Advisory Committee minutes, September 19th, 2019. And 6.3, the Channels Advisory Committee minutes, September 11th. I get a mover and second. Moved by Councillor McLeod, seconded by Councillor Berman. All those in favor? Excellent. Staff report 7.1. P 2019-35 bylaw enforcement policy. Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like that we refer this to the next SIC meeting. I think it's something that all 9 members of council are going to want to get into at the same time and have a lot of input. So I'd just like to see if there's a desire there to do that.
Defer it, not refer it?
Refer it, I believe, to the next SIC, but I'll look.
It's fine.
I'll look for it.
Okay, so no discussion on that? Can I get a seconder on that? Seconded by Councillor McLeod. All those in favor? All those against? That is passed. 7.2. C 2019-06 Government Structure and Procedural Bylaw Review. That the Corporate and Community...
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
I'd like to move a similar motion to what just went through on item 7.1 because this is a rather large and important report that I think that all 9 members of council will want to weigh in on and discuss, and that I think that should happen at a Strategic Initiatives Committee meeting. I'd like to move that we refer it to the next meeting of the Strategic Initiative Committee.
Okay, no discussion on that. Can I get a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Berman. All those in favor?
Question. When is our next SIC?
Through the chair to Mayor Saunderson, we proposed a date for our next SIC meeting to be October 31st, and I believe I have quorum for that meeting.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.3, PRC 2019-14, Town of Collingwood Cycling Plan. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that the Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next regular meeting of Council. Mr. Culver?
Hello, committee members. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to open up the PowerPoint here. Can you hear me okay? Feels like I'm standing away. So I'm gonna introduce this, but Wendy Martin here will take the lion's share of it, as she has worked very closely with the cycle plan consultant in the development of this over the past year, and definitely deserves the chance to bring it forward. If I could have the next slide. Oh, I got it. Perfect. So just as by way of introduction, obviously this plan is it's been quote unquote long awaited, and we've been looking forward to presenting it. But I think just by way of explanation, when I started with this program, when we first started talking about doing a cycle plan after winning the OMSIP award, the Ontario Municipal Cycling Infrastructure Program Award, I thought it was going to be a pretty quick process. It was simply taking what we had, mashing it together into a coherent plan, and then rolling it out so that we could move forward with all the other things that we could get by way of OMSIP funding and whatnot. And I think I didn't really understand just how integrated this was with all the other plans, strat plan, PRC master plan that was going on concurrently. There were a whole pile of things that kind of all had to come together, and there was also not enough policy to really have us feel like we had an established foundation to even begin the plan. So we had to do a lot more consultation and development in order to get to the plan that's in front of you today. I also want to say that along the way we've also identified that there are going to be significant challenges to implementing this policy. And I put aside for a second the dollar figure associated with implementation, really just about a staff capacity. And I know, I don't know if you made it out, but Director McDonald was actually going to be here tonight to also potentially address questions in that regard, because just capacity-wise, just our ability to deal with the engineering required to develop certain cycling infrastructure facilities, understand plans and how they're going to have impacts relative to the traffic study, traffic calming, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of work involved in that, and at this point we are, as staff, and especially in the engineering department, I might say, overwhelmed. And so how do we get there? Well, there's going to have to be some capacity building in order to get there. So I would like this committee to understand that as we go about presenting. What will help us with that actually though is that we're going to keep this plan evergreen in nature. It means we're going to continually rationalize against the current status. So as projects emerge, as provincial conditions change, as the community grows, we're going to continue to go back and revisit the cycling plan to make sure that where we're at in that plan and in implementation is appropriate for that time. So that will actually help us if we're continually monitoring. And I just wanted to point out as well, I mentioned a second ago about the interrelationship with other plans and studies, and if I go this way, this gives you a bit of an idea, and this is more of an example than anything, but obviously we have our overarching strategic plan, community-based strategic plan, and the active transportation framework that came out as a result of that. That was a lens over which we're going to be putting on every project that we do to see if it has an applicability or where we can support active transportation through that project. That actually did lead us to bidding and applying to the grant for the OMSIP grant to support the cycle plan development. But you can see, for example, in one of the upcoming studies that has been projected by council, the traffic calming studies, that they will actually be in a relationship. There'll be a relationship between our cycle facilities and traffic calming, and that'll help inform the traffic calming plan, but also the traffic calming plan will help inform future implementations and within the cycle plan. And off to the left side, you'll see that it actually has a relationship with all the other plans we have, official plan, the transportation plan, in the waterfront master plan, and I know that sort of strikes, well, how does the cycle plan? Well, as we build an active corridor along the waterfront, we want to make sure that we're looking after both the intent and design of the waterfront master plan as well as the cycle plan, so these things have to interrelate. The PRC master plan interrelates in the basis of healthy living and promoting outdoor activity and all those parts of the plan that were really important, and then there's more. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a broad understanding before Wendy gets into some of the outcomes, and if you have any questions, obviously we can answer them at the end. Okay?
Thank you so much. I will back up just a little bit and reiterate with what Director Culver was mentioning. This plan was a collaboration between Parks, Public Works and Engineering, Planning Department, Trails Committee, the Accessibility Committee, as well as input through a public survey. So there was lots of different variables to consider when pulling the plan together. The goal of the plan is to provide cycling infrastructure that is signed, identified, and maintained. The plan identifies policies, programs, and facilities needed to make cycling an attractive everyday mobility option for residents ranging from 8 to 80 years old with a wide range of abilities. So the context and need for the plan, again, it started with the community-based strategic plan, which has a vision including a healthy lifestyle. The active transportation framework was endorsed in 2017, which is a tool or a lens that applies to everything that the town does, including the cycling plan. And then the PRC master plan was finalized in 2018, concurrently being developed with the cycling plan. And recommendations within the cycling plan support the overall intentions of the PRC master plan. This plan also considers the overall traffic volumes and resulting timing of road needs from the recent transportation study update as well. So this plan will be periodically updated and rationalized over time and will influence other plans such as our upcoming official plan update. So Director Culver covered a lot of that. So what the cycling plan provides, this slide is what the plan is and what the plan is not. So what the cycling plan provides is a bold vision for the town and a proposed network. The plan also provides clarification of our policy and our gaps. It enables staff to make faster decisions where cycling is not planned so that we don't revisit a decision every time as to whether the cycling route should go down this road or not. What the cycling plan is not is a request for funding and individual projects approval. It's not a detailed design for any project, and it's not a final suite of policies and standards. That is definitely an area that requires more work. So the cycling vision, this is the vision that was supported by public consultation, analysis, and best practices. So the cycling vision is the town of Collingwood aspires to create a safe, well-connected, and convenient cycling network, reaching all corners of the town and connecting with surrounding municipalities. Cycling aims to contribute to this community's development as a world-class destination. The network will be supported by policies and programs that promote a healthy and active lifestyle for all ages and abilities. An important note of this cycling plan is the route selection process prioritized existing off-road routes over on-road facilities where the option existed. While this may detract from the ease and speed of cycling for more confident users, safety and implementation considerations took precedence. So this route selection allows us to understand how well equipped we are already in Collingwood. So even though we may not have policies in place or markings on the ground, we do have the routes to move people throughout the town. This cycling plan has provided staff with a strategic approach to move forward. Within the plan, it provides design guidelines, such as pavement markings and signage for the on-road and off-road facilities, as well as for crossrides and roundabouts. The plan also provides recommendations for end-of-trip amenities, which are essential to a successful cycling system. So we can't forget about those end-of-trip because we can get people on a bike, but if they don't have a secure place to lock their bike or anything else that they need at the end of their trip, they're not going to get on their bike. So we need to provide them the whole deal. So developing the network, the route corridors were chosen based on the following criteria: that they be connected and integrated, they be accessible, they be context sensitive and cost effective, safe and comfortable, interesting and enjoyable. Our network consists of corridors and connections to move people throughout town. So this slide represents the main cycling routes. The examples for east to west include the Harbourview Trail from First Street all the way up to Beechwood Road, 3rd and Ontario Street, 6th Street and Poplar Side Road, 6th Street, and then Poplar Side Road, Hamilton Drain. And north-south examples include Balsam and High Street, Maple and Pine Street, and the Train Trail. Gaps and discontinuities do exist in the network, and resolving these will help enhance safety and encourage the interested but concerned individual to choose cycling over other travel options. So areas that have gaps include the northwest connection to the Blue Mountains along Highway 26. So there is a gap where it's missing the off-road directly against the highway section. So it goes a bit into the woods. West connection to Blue Mountain Village at First Street and the Old Mountain Road area. So again, we have done a study on a link to the village at Blue, and we're just waiting for funding to become available to be able to take the connection out to the west part of town. The train trail and Harborview Trail connection along Heritage Drive and Side Launch Way. A bit of a gap, just not in infrastructure, but more in signage, pavement markings, that type of thing to direct people onto Side Launch Way. 6th Street and Hume Street connection. Again, the infrastructure is there, but the wayfinding and the pavement markings and whatnot to direct people safely through that intersection, as well as the east connection to Wasaga Beach. So there's another gap missing past Marine View Drive before it hits Beechwood Road. So those are gaps that are identified in the network. So what we can expect, this is an example of pavement markings and signage for on-road bike lanes. So this is what we would see on Hume Street, 6th Street, and the future 3rd and Ontario Street. Those are examples. Sample pavement markings for two-way shared use paths. So Harborview Trail is an example of what will become a shared use, two-way shared use path, as well as the train trail when they're upgraded to asphalt. We talked about cross rides, and currently at an intersection, cyclists are not allowed to technically ride through the intersection on their bike. They are to dismount and cross the intersection safely. Making this a cross ride, according to the Ministry of Transportation regulations and whatnot, will allow cyclists to ride their bike through an intersection. These, as you can see on the slide, this shows major upgrades to the intersection, as well as education for the cyclist and the motorist. There's quite a bit going on in the intersection, and we want to make sure that, not only is the motorist aware of who has the right of way, but the cyclists are also aware. To upgrade, so examples of these intersections would be Heritage Drive and Huron Street, First and High. So imagine upgrading First and High to include cross rides. Includes a lot of real estate. There's a lot going on there. And as well, it needs to be resourced appropriately. So building expectations comes with education and ensuring that it's going to be safe. If we're going to be offering these cross rides, we need to make sure that the users feel safe using them. So the plan identifies, implementation of the plan identifies it into a short-term and a long-term scheduling. I don't even know if scheduling is the right word. So the first step in the 0 to 5 is to develop a Trails and Active Transportation Advisory Committee. And this committee will have resources from PRC and engineering, and currently actually we are reviewing the terms of reference of the advisory committee. Once the committee is established, one of their goals will be to prioritize and advise staff on the 0 to 5 year projects, as well as the 5 to 10 year projects. Other examples of projects is to develop a traffic calming policy, and to install pavement markings, signage, wayfinding signs, to confirm maintenance standards along the cycling route, as well as paving the trail through Central Park to provide the missing link from Hamilton Street to Train Trail, and to help build awareness of cycling, working with stakeholders to build on their expertise of safe cycling. And then projects 5 to 10 year, again, no timeline because these are big investments and they'll be timed with broader capital works. So examples include constructing the missing multi-use sidewalk along High Street between 3rd and 5th. As part of the 3rd Street upgrade, install bike lanes, pave the train trail and the Harborview Trail and apply appropriate markings and signage. And then in conjunction with capital work projects, construct bike lanes and multi-use trail on Mountain Road, 10th Line, High Street. So they're extremely large projects that require a lot of staff resources, require a lot of money. But they will provide substantial improvements to the route. And back to Dean for conclusion.
So That's a lot taken, and I know the document is a large one to absorb. I hope getting it to you a little bit earlier was helpful for trying to read through it. I will say that it obviously, hope obviously represents, hundreds of hours of work and a lot of involvement to try and get to this place we're at. And I think, while we stand behind it and we think that it is a good plan, we also recognize that it comes with a lot of challenges and something that we're gonna have to continually work on. We think that this plan represents what the community has told us it wants and what you as councillors have told us the community needs. The cycle plan clarifies some assumptions, it gives some purposeful direction, and maybe just most importantly, promotes cycling as a key and supported mode of transportation in Collingwood. And through the collaboration of all the town departments that have been involved in the development of the plan, we're all keenly aware of the uphill climb in front of us and the capacity building that will need to be established to provide for this bold new vision. But it's a start, and we're pleased to make this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this fantastic 130-page presentation? Just for the people at home, it's some of these reports are given so quickly at committee that when Director Culver said the hundreds of hours, the report was 130 pages, and it really wasn't double-spaced and there wasn't a lot of pictures. So congratulations for doing that and giving us a very, very well-rounded report. It was very much appreciated, and my questions that I would have on one page were answered 2 pages later, so thank you very much. Seeing no one from the public, the motion is that the Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next regular meeting of Council. Staff recommendation that staff report PRC 2019-14 be received, and further to that the Town of Collingwood Cycling Plan and the recommendations contained herein be received, and that Council directs staff to implement the recommendations through funding requests during budget deliberations. Can I get a mover and second? Moved by Councillor Berman, seconded by Councillor McLeod. Any questions or comments? Councillor McLeod.
Of course I have questions. Thank you for this report and for the diligence and hard work that clearly was put into it. I want to talk a little bit about asphalt because it seems to be rather a prominent feature, both in the short and long-term vision. How does upgrading to asphalt, A, fit in with our green plans for the town? Because I know it's a petroleum product and that sort of thing. And what are the arguments in favor of asphalting versus the dust that we currently use? Through you, Mr. Chair.
So I'll take a stab at it, and then Wendy can correct me after I've made mistakes. So this is actually a really good example of the interrelationship of plans. We don't currently have, we have an environmental plan that's built around sort of our corporate out policies. We haven't got sort of an internal policy built yet, but when we do, it would be the expectation they dovetail together, and one might inform the other. So at this point, the reason why we would choose asphalt is because of maintenance, primarily maintenance and resilience, and it means that the trail stays in place and we have less operational dollars committed to restoring it. But you're absolutely right that if an environmental plan comes along that says that that's a bad idea in terms of corporate policy, then we'd have to look at other alternatives and see what else there is out there. So what was the other part of the question about?
But what's the argument in favor of asphalt versus the stuff we use currently, the dust, on most of the trail line? And I know there's parts of it that are asphalted, but for example, the Hamilton Drain Trail and the Train Trail are not.
Correct. Most of our trails are not, so through you, Chair, sorry.
No,
So it has to do with operational maintenance predominantly. We don't have the irregularities that can occur when, weather affects the trail. We don't have the wear and tear that on 70 kilometers of trail, you can understand that, sometimes we don't get to it before a pedestrian or a resident does, and then we get informed and we have to follow up. So it's not, there's no perfect solution, but that's probably, hopefully that's a complete answer for you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Does the suggestion that there become an active transportation and trails committee mean that that this plan is suggesting the end of the trails committee as it is currently incorporated, as it is extant?
So through you, Chair. I prefer the word incorporated if possible, yeah. We benefit from the relationship with the Trails Committee, and I think what we've identified, I mean, even as the cycling plan was being developed, and I would say even, you know, prior to it, the beginning, the Trails Committee's been involved in active transportation for a long time. You know, when we're talking about on-road cycling routes, and I know Jack's back there talking about storm grates and things like that, we're moving into a bit of a broader field than trails as it was conventionally known. So I think this acknowledges that transformation, acknowledges again a response to what the community is asking for. You know, I see it as an incorporation of ideals and process.
Okay, thank you. One more,
Yes.
if that's all right with you, Mr. Chair. Can we talk a little bit about winter? Not that we want to talk about winter, but winter is coming. If we want to, if we asphalt more of these trails, is there some suggestion at all, which I didn't see in the plan, but are we thinking that there might be winter maintenance of some of these trails in order to facilitate winter cycling?
Thank you. So through you, Chair, I'm going to try and answer, but I'm also going to gratefully look at Director McDonald, who's joined us for some support as well. So one of the significant short-term challenges that we've known it since I think May of 2018, is that if you identify a designated bike route or bike lane, that you need to remove the snow. Well, in Collingwood, we have so much snow and so little space to put it that one of the places we put it is it encroaches upon the bike lane. There's just not enough room on boulevards to store all the snow that we get. So this creates a very significant challenge, and I believe, is it book 18? Do you want to come and answer the question properly?
Director McDonald,
I wasn't gonna call on him, but
welcome. Director Culver gave it a valid attempt and bailed out very, very quickly.
Certainly, I think what Director Culver is trying to explain is the minimum maintenance standards. So the province came out with minimum maintenance standards with respect to all aspects of our roads and sidewalks, and in the most recent edition, they included standards for bike lanes. So if you have a bike lane, there are certain standards in terms of maintaining it. Bike lanes, road bike lanes, not trails. And I think your original question was with respect to trails and paving of trails. We do have some trails that are paved, and the purpose or the reason why we paved some of those trails is strictly because we were able to maintain them. Huron Street is an example. The trail along Huron Street near Niagara, it was a gravel trail, and in order to allow pedestrian access in the winter, we had to pave that portion of the trail so that we can get our equipment on it. We have plows and sidewalk blowers, and if you try and plow or blow a granular trail, you'll be pushing it out the blower and not maintaining the trail. So if there is a desire to move towards having some of the trails all year round access for walking or cycling per se, you're going to have to look at a hard surface, and paving is one of those options.
And so, just to follow up with Director Mendel, if that's all right, Mr. Chair. So, we talked about the province having minimum standards for bike lane maintenance with regard to snow, and so is there a plan for that?
Staff are currently working on a report to bring forward to council with recommendations for how to deal with the minimum maintenance standards in that particular aspect, because there certainly are some challenges, as Director Culver explained, in maintaining a bike lane all year round with the amount of snow we get. Certainly in Metro Toronto, they're able to provide those kind of standards, but we're looking at a number of options, and I can't prejudge what we're going to come up with, so I don't really want to suggest that we're going to be recommending one way or another, but we will be coming before our committee with a report on our winter maintenance policies.
Thank you so much. Those are my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mayor Saunderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to whoever wants to answer these questions. I guess I'm going to start off with a couple of observations and then a few questions. And like the chair, I want to congratulate you on this report. I think this is one of a number of moving parts that we're trying to push forward with through our community-based strategic plan, Active Healthy Lifestyles. And with our traffic calming, our transportation study, our OP review, I think it's safe to say we're pushing forward to try and make our community active transportation centered, focused, and to provide safe trails and routes for our residents. And if I just looking at the short-term goals for the first 5 years, is it fair to say that we're looking at sort of low-hanging fruit to provide those safe routes through road markings, some short-term paving, signage, and wayfaring signs? That's kind of the focus of the first 5 years, is to sort of introduce and protect our cyclists so that they have a more active role kind of in our transportation scheme, and it's not just the primacy of motor vehicles.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I think you're absolutely right that they're low-hanging fruit, but I also don't want to underestimate some of the challenges that will come with implementing them. And this is, again, where collaboration with the department identifies it's not as simple as simply painting the ground. We need to understand what that means in terms of short, medium, and long-term operational costs, how we're communicating properly so that people understand what's trying to be communicated, and rationalize all of it. And so, as much as it's low-hanging fruit, and that is the right thing. And you also said something else. You said that we want to support and show people that we're moving forward. That's actually, I think, the real big push in the first 5 years, is to continually improve, create better conditions each time we take on a project, whatever that might be, whether it is putting in a Cheryl or paving the trail through Central Park to complete that east-west route. Those are not small projects, but they are the most identifiable in terms of short-term gains.
And I think you've answered my question in the sense that really we're starting the discussion that we're trying to push forward now, cycling as a safe, active, healthy lifestyle, and give them their proper place on the roadways and in the trail system. And to the extent that we can do it, you've indicated that where it's a trail versus a road, we will look usually to the trails, because then their cyclists are on their own and it seems to be safer. And properly identify that much of this stuff will come through the budget discussions in terms of the money that we're looking at, and that will be for another day. And I guess my one comment of caution, I think probably to staff, the public, and the council around the table, is that we have a lot of moving parts, and that we're starting now on a very long-term process to enhance cycling in our community and active transportation generally. And so I guess the challenge for staff and council is to keep making sure we push down that agenda, that we're not just generating reports for report's sake, that we're actually implementing and putting these policies in place for a reason and acting on those policies. So I think the report is great. And I know we've got a lot of other things in the works, and I'm just hopeful that council will maintain the focus that we're really action-oriented here, and we need to use these things as a roadmap, literally, and move forward with this. And I've now learned that Cheryl is not a song from a recent blockbuster movie. Anyway, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Once again, the mayor has tried to make a joke at committee level. It did not go over well, but I will.
Six.
He's smiling. I love it.
6.
Give it a 6. That's a pass. That's a pass. So just before you leave, again, I can't echo the 130 pages of information, but you were speaking about cyclist education. So is that going to be done through in correspondence maybe with the Ontario government? How can we get the education out to the people to get a basic understanding of what's going to and what can and cannot happen? Because I think a lot of the problems when cyclists and motorists are on the road is the key understanding of what the rules are. So how can the town of Collingwood and Parks, Rec and Culture help the people of Collingwood? Obviously, we're pushing forward with this. Obviously, it's important in this community. People move here for lifestyle. How can we get that education out there?
So thanks for that question. That's a good one. The primary way that the plan talks about it is engaging stakeholder groups. So the OPP is a prime stakeholder in helping with cycling education. The cycle clubs are obviously a stakeholder as well. We also have a lot of work to do internally in terms of promoting safe cycle routes once they're established and demarcated properly. Wayfinding is actually one of the key programs that was discussed when we were making the application of the OMSIP. So with some of the OMSIP funding, we may head down the road of trying to implement some of that wayfinding signage that will help people to understand where the safest routes are. So there is education through a number of forms, but I think stakeholder engagement and utilizing some of those channels that exist in the community is probably the primary way.
Excellent, cool. So I'm hoping that through that we'll reach out to the local public schools, high schools, Chamber of Commerce, BIA, all the stakeholders in the community. One of the biggest parts of the presentation that I enjoyed was that you're going to continue to monitor it. So as the mayor said, it's not just doing a report to do a report. We're going to continue. It's like a living, breathing document, and the best way to make it successful is to monitor it. So thank you very much. And saying that, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? It's passed unanimously. Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on, 7.4. The PRC 2019-15 tree donation update. Director Culver, the good news.
Thank you, Chair. What this is report is coming full circle from the tree donation that was presented to Council by Councillor Hamlin, and it helps us to get to a place where we have everybody has understanding of the roles and responsibilities. So essentially, with the signing of this agreement, the next step would be for some funding to arrive and us to begin working towards planning.
Yay. Yay. So just for clarification for the people at home, the people in the audience, can you take 2 minutes and go over this very short one page about how much money is going to be donated into our community to assist in keeping it green?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. The donor, when we met with her, initially was talking in the neighborhood of 1,000 trees, and that was very hard for us to sort of financially quantify. So I will say, with absolute awe for her generosity, by the end of the meeting, she was offering $100,000 a year for the next 5 years. So the total spend would be $500,000 towards green stuff in our community.
Sorry, I'm smiling. You're smiling. Everybody's now smiling because I put the pressure on. Thank you so much for that. Is there anybody from the public that would like to stand up and comment on this or have any questions about it? Excellent. So the staff recommendation is that staff report PRC 2019-15 be received and that council direct mayor and clerk to sign the donor agreement as indicated within this report, and that council direct staff to proceed with the implementation of the agreement to meet the expectations of the donor, subject to the full execution of the agreement and receipt of donor funding. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Mayor Saunderson, seconded by Councillor Berman. Any comments or questions, Mayor Saunderson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a general comment. I'm very happy to see the donation agreement in place. I think this is a great practice, and it was one that came from the meeting, and I think it was the donor herself that provided the draft that we worked from. But I think it's a great way for our community to be held accountable for these types of generous donations, and so that there's a metric by which the donor can test and measure the success of their donations and hold us accountable, because this is certainly a wonderful donation. There was the instant meeting of the minds on how we would carry this out, but it's great to have it in writing so that the donor knows what they're getting, we know what we're getting, and our community knows what to expect from the whole process. So I think this is a great precedent for us.
Yes, couldn't agree more. Councillor McLeod.
I have a comment and a question. I think planting a tree is probably the most optimistic thing a human being can do, because you're never going to see how gorgeous it is yourself. Only your children and grandchildren will really appreciate it. With that in mind, though, a question for Director Culver. Are there provisions within this agreement, I did read it over, but I may have missed it, are there provisions within this agreement that some of the trees may go onto private properties within the town limits? Or is it strictly boulevards and parks and wherever PRC decides? What I'm asking is if people can apply to have one of these donated trees on their property.
No, Director Culver?
Through you, Chair. So we got to an agreement. Part of the agreement is that the donor would like to sit down with us each year to review the plans annually. Certainly it's been discussed, and I think that's probably, I don't want to make a promise because at this point I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but I will say that it's been discussed that that would actually be a big upside if private lands could be included in this as well. So by all means, I think let's take that optimism forward. Are there hurdles or hoops to jump through? I don't know at this moment. Is there liability associated, for example? I don't know. Probably not, and it will probably work out perfectly well. But definitely it's been discussed, and it's something that I think the donor is receptive to that idea.
Thank you.
What a great question. Any more questions? See none? This is a big thank you. I know you guys don't do this for the thank yous, but this is a big thank you on behalf of this committee for whoever did this to make this happen for us. So, smiley face, smiley face. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Departmental updates. 8.1, art crawl presentation. It's Jennifer Parker, Coordinator of Community Wellbeing and Inclusion. Welcome. Welcome, Ms. Parker.
So on September 21st, we held art crawl. So I'm going to preface this by saying I played a very small role in what was an amazing event. Butter Gallery, Collingwood Downtown, Century 21, the Jen Schulte team, Province Ontario, Tourism Simcoe County, and then an array of staff actively were involved in creating a significant, impactful event in our downtown area. We had 41 different venues, so that was from retail shops to restaurants, bars, cafes, offices, art galleries, artists, 74 different artists, musical arts or acts, that was 57, and we're all set to have another art crawl in 2020 on September the 19th. However, I was asked to present a different kind of way of engaging our community, so that's what I'm going to speak to, just very briefly. So in keeping with art crawl and looking at different ways of asking questions, we wanted to know what the community or people coming to the event felt about the event, and that created the art of opinion, and that's kind of what I've got over here. So we kind of canvassed and looked at ideas of using iPads and face-to-face surveys and that type of thing, and instead we tried to kind of fit with the ambiance and the character of art crawl and created art through opinion. And so on your left-hand side, what we asked were for people to identify how they would rank. So if they thought it was excellent, to very good, to good, to okay, and this needs some changing. And to, based on that opinion, to pick a dot. Not knowing specifically what the color represented for that dot, but more the word was associated with the color. And then they put it up onto a board. And so that's what you've got on the left-hand side. So we have a visual display of opinion, and we also have a numerical way of collecting that data. So based on art of opinion on the left-hand side, we had 238 people that participated, from young to old, which is great because we had engagement from all kinds of different people with different attitudes, different perspectives. It was an interesting social experiment because also there was an overwhelming success from the perspective of those that were participating. And so what we noticed was that they tried to start to hide the lower kind of rankings too. So I'm sure someone could do a PhD on the art of opinion, but anyways, I'm just showing you what we got. So based on this, we had 75% chose the yellow, or this was an excellent event, don't change a thing, this is fantastic. 23% was very good, or orange. And 4 children, because I stood there the whole time, chose good. Which I think was interesting because what does good mean? What does excellent mean? What does very good? It's very kind of subjective. So that's of art opinion and art crawl. And then on the left, to unpack kind of why you had those opinions, we had a pin-up board. And that's what you see on the left-hand side. And that is our community engagement piece for art crawl.
Cool. Cool. Any questions from the audience? Any comments? Seeing none, this is just an update, so any questions or comments from the committee? Mayor Saunderson.
Okay, I'll let this one go by. I just was downtown that night. The weather was spectacular, and so was the event. It was extremely well attended. So if I had found that to put it, I would have put a yellow one up there for sure. So just add me to that. Congratulations, John.
Thank you. I will pass that on for sure. A lot of those comments were, and you'll see on the left-hand side, was that it was great to see so many members of our community. So we saw visitors and we saw lots of local people, so it was fantastic.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Councillor McLeod? All smiles. This is a great way to end a committee meeting.
I could put some dots, we could canvas, you could add.
This is a great way to end. It's
Opinion
all
for
positivity. I love it.
Gordon.
First the lots of money and then this. How many people chose to take part in on the left-hand side there? So we have 238 people that did the excellent, very good, and the 4 lovely children that said good, which probably means amazing. But how many people chose to write comments down?
Yeah, so we collectively had 46
Okay,
comments.
okay.
And the majority were positive. They were themed down to general. There were questions and comments around traffic, so around roads and whether or not there was an opportunity to close a road, about the artists and the value of the artists, and then the musicians as well. Maybe some placement between stations with musicians, and then timing, wanting to know or have the event extend longer or have more of them, and that type of thing.
Excellent. Was there any other questions maybe to some of the venues?
Nothing that I collected.
Okay, okay.
But part of that research into art crawl is going back to the musicians, the artists, and the participating venues to see what their feedback was. So this was just our community or public consultation, but there will be other consultation for sure.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. (8.2) An update on applications for the Mayor's Advisory Team on Economic Development. Mr. Ridlow, nice to see you.
Good evening, Chair Madigan, Council, staff. Gives me great pleasure to give you an update in terms of how we're doing on the advisory team applications. We right now, as of about 15 minutes ago, stand 14 applicants. Yes, they come in my inbox at all hours of the day. And we have 3 women, 11 men, all of whom have extensive business experience, not only regionally but internationally. It's actually it's impressive and certainly exciting to see that kind of response to the request. We've got 24 hours to go in terms of applications, so I encourage you to reach out to your network and encourage them to apply. I know for a few folks they probably left it to the last minute, but we do still have 24 hours and that's okay. It's a rather simple process. It takes about 10-15 minutes. Certainly looking forward to closing up tomorrow, and then begins the selection process. We obviously have criteria that we'll be evaluating with our internal team as well as with the consultants.
So just before we go any further, you said it's a very easy thing. Can you just run over it quickly if anybody's watching at home on Rogers or streaming us, what they have to do to apply?
Absolutely. If people go to www.collingwood.ca and choose Engage Collingwood, which is on the left-hand side of the website, this will be one of the biggest parts of Engage Collingwood right now. So it's fairly easy to see. There's a preamble there that just tells people a little bit more about what's required, what's expected of them. The biggest expectation really is being present at the November 25th, 26th work session. And doing some pre-reading and a quick call with the consultants before that. And the application process just asks a few questions around their background, where they live, so on, in particular what experience they'd be bringing to the advisory team. Mr. Ferguson has been able to pull that up. and showcase the page. It's got some very good detail, I think, to help people with the application.
Excellent. So hopefully all ages and experience have the opportunity to jump on our fantastic webpage, award-winning webpage. If I might remind people of that, award-winning webpage, and apply to this to be part of Collingwood's future. Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Comments? No? Anything from committee? Of course, the mayor would definitely like to speak on this. This is exciting.
Yes.
Thank you for doing this, Mayor Saunderson. It's much appreciated in the town of Collingwood finally to do it this way and give the people the opportunity and have it chosen through consultants. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I was going to lob this out to Mr. Ridlow. Really what we're trying to do in this is give ourselves an action plan to make Collingwood investment ready. Maybe you could just summarize the process and what we're looking for when the dust settles at the end of the day on this.
Through you, Chair Madigan. What we're really looking for is creating an action plan. I stress the action plan part. There are lots of projects that create strategies. At this point, we've got some good momentum in Collingwood when it comes to economic development. The last 5 years focused on laying a foundation, business development center, various partners coming together, working together. What we need now is a much more proactive, dynamic plan to help market and sell Collingwood to investors outside of these four corners of Collingwood. That's not saying that we do not want to be focusing on encouraging the growth of our existing businesses, but really if the end objective of an economic plan is to help diversify the tax base so that the residential, the tax burden does not sit on the residential tax base, then we want to make sure that we diversify that both from a commercial as well as from an industrial standpoint. And that's really the plan that we're trying to create here. We've been able to gain recognition for all kinds of things, top entrepreneurship community in Canada, top 25 places to live, best outdoor town in Eastern Canada. It's time to translate that into something that will help us with that tax base so that we can continue building the great trails, resources, and other aspects that we so often talk about at council.
That was excellent. Could have scripted it better. And just one follow-up question. 24 hours from now, what's the actual drop dead deadline? Because I had a telephone call just before I came out to this meeting today.
Through you, Chair Madigan, it is midnight tomorrow at this point.
Good. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Excellent.
Looking forward to this.
Any other questions or comments? Good. Thank you for bringing to the attention that we're not just forgetting about our existing businesses, but this will only enhance and help them, bringing more industry, potential industry, whether it be small, little mom and pop industries or big ones, back into the community. Will really invigorate an already exciting downtown and for street corridor. So thank you very much for doing that, and thank you for the 14 applicants, soon to be more, hopefully within the next 24 hours. Thank you very much, Mr. Ridlow. Moving on, it's a public delegation. There's a maximum of 5 minutes for any delegation that you would like to give that has something that pertains to this committee. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to get up and speak? Seeing none? Other business? Any other business? Seeing none? Thank you very much for watching at home, attending in the audience, or watching us live stream, and we look for an adjournment. Councillor MacLeod, all those in favor? Thank you.